Rev up your engines!
Stellantis is screwing the workers over after that UAW contract, right? You know, they're all being sold down the line. Who knows what the UAW officials got out of it, but a bunch of Stellantis workers. Now, these were supplemental employees, and they said, oh, you're going to get full-time jobs. Well, guess what? Maybe they will. They got fired from Stellantis. Now they got to find a job somewhere else. Any fool knows that Stellantis, being a European company, is going to get rid of American jobs and put them in Europe. I'm ready. They're making a bunch of Jeeps in Italy where the quality, everybody knows, is garbage, but they're a European company. That's what they want to do. They don't care about American jobs. 550 supplemental employees at their auto plants in Detroit and across the United States. We're told your last work day will be January 12, 2024, and your medical benefits will last until the end of January. Whoa, they gave them a whole, 2.5 weeks. We do appreciate your contribution to the company and wish you well in your future endeavors. Isn't that typical what a corporation is going to do? Well, they kick you in the rear end, out the door, right? Anybody that thought these deals they were cutting was going to be any good for the workers, out of their minds. They just end up shutting down plants, firing people. You can't stop a corporation from firing people. They can do whatever they want. It's their company, right? And cutting deals with them, they think that they're going to even stand by the deals that they've cut. Of course they're not going to. They said, they promised to supplement to workers. Well, they'll get full-time jobs now. We'll hire you. Now they're just firing them instead. Maybe that was the whole idea in the first place. You can become full-time workers somewhere else. As a young worker said, he was fired from the Warren plant. Fain said the strike would make things better for us, and we would be protected from being fired for nothing and for mass layoffs. It all was a lie. I have had perfect attendance record with Stellantis. I know multiple jobs and reliable. I was terminated from the company. And the union says, well, there's nothing we can do for that, even though we've been paying union dues. Yeah, collusion between the high up and the union and the companies. Like, that's something new now. That's been going on look at Fiat Chrysler had to pay all those fines for the collusion that they had going on in the past. I don't think it's going to change, That promise to poor workers something after they sign the deal. Then they just fire them and say, too bad. And then the union says, I'm sorry. Nothing we can do about it. Yeah, you can't trust them on either side. The people at the top, guess what they're looking out for? Themselves and no one else. Well, if you saw that news about the electric buses, the double-deckers started on fire and blowing up in England, guess what? Now, the entire fleet of electric buses are taken off the roads after a precaution. After one exploded on the school run, leaving the passengers terrified. This was in Wimbledon, southwest London. Save the planet with electric buses? Well, maybe not such a smart idea. The problem is, buses are huge. Therefore, they weigh a lot. And then you're full of people, they weigh even more. So they got to have huge, gigantic batteries, right? The bigger they are, the more chance they have of starting on fire because they have more and more cells inside. Realize all these little battery cells are all bolted together, right? One loose connection and those things overheat and start on fire. And of course, the bigger the battery is, the bigger the battery fire is going to be too. We're not talking about, little bitty ones that I run on my camera. We're talking about humongous things that weigh thousands and thousands of pounds, right? Well, now the British are taking them off. I guess they're going to think about it for a while, but it kind of shows. These people jump into these things. They don't think any of the ramifications of the technologies that they're doing, that they cost a fortune. Like in New York City, they got, I think it was 5 or 7 of them that they were using for snow plows. Well, they gave up because they said they just couldn't plow the snow. They didn't have enough energy. At least theirs didn't start on fire, right? But there's so many downsides to these things. The idea that they're just throwing these things out there, and in this case, burning down to the ground. Luckily, nobody was hurt in these things. Maybe people should start thinking before they just jump into this electric nonsense with buses and snow plows when it's just not a logical thing to do. Small trips, small vehicles, much better idea. The bigger they get, the bigger the battery, the more money they cost, the harder it is to recharge them, and the bigger the fire they're going to make when they start on fire. Well, be careful if you buy new high-tech stuff cars, you might get screwed over. Here it is, one of the world's more expensive bicycles. And this guy wrote an article which he said, I bought the world's hottest high-tech e-bike. Then the maker went bankrupt, and I can't get parts. Who couldn't see that one come? If you've looked around, there are literally hundreds of electric bicycles, brands out there. Now, there's only a certain amount of places in China where they actually build most of them, right? And anybody who wants to do it can make up a name, tell them to build them, thousands of them, they'll build them. You know, you can get them for like $400 or $500 in China and then sell them for a bunch of money like these companies do. Now, in the case of this company, it was called the Van Moof. And this guy bought a Van Moof X3 for like $2,500 for an electric bicycle. And then he finds out when something went wrong, well, the company's bankrupt now. I can't get parts for it. So be leery of what you buy. Now, even the cheap end stuff from China, I found, is virtually impossible to get parts for. A friend of mine, Rhode Island, he's got a bike shop in Newport, and he works on them because he cares about his customers, right? And he had one customer bring in one of these Chinese bikes that he paid $1,500 for, and the motor was broken. It was still under warranty, right? He called and called and called and called and called, and finally got through, and they said, well, what do you need? He says, well, the motor's broken. So what did they send him? They sent him the entire half of a bicycle, because they don't make the motors themselves, right? They buy assemblies. So they sent him the whole half of this electric bicycle. He had to take it apart, and it turns out that the wiring was different in the motor that they sent him in the half of the bicycle after he took it apart. He saw it's different than the one that was in it. And he had to rewire the whole thing. At least he is a good mechanic, and he got it to work for the guy. But it's very rarely you're going to find anybody like him that's going to work on bicycles and do a good job and not rip you off. Most guys in that situation, if they did get it and they sent them half a bicycle with the motor on it, they just say, look, these guys can't get a motor. I'm not going to take this half of a bicycle apart and try to make it fit on yours, right? But that's the problem with almost all these electric bicycles is you can't get parts for them. People don't know how to work on them. And in this case, he bought a high-end one, and away the company went. And now he's got a bicycle. He can't get parts for it. What's he going to do? So be very leery when you're buying that kind of stuff. You know, it's one thing if you buy one that's $400 or $500 or something. What the heck? If it lasts a while, have some fun on it. But don't think just because you're buying an expensive one that it's any good. Most of it is the same junk made in China, and they just mark it up more. I saw ones that I could have bought in China for $500. They were selling them for $2,600 in the magazine. They called them hunting electric bicycles. They were painted camouflage. Well, obviously, some guy just bought them in China and either had the Chinese paint them with camouflage, or he brought them to the United States and camouflage painted them himself, and then went from a $500 to a $2,500 bicycle, and he was selling them for $2,500. Where you could buy the same thing for $500 in China and paint it yourself. So be leery if you're buying electric bicycles. Don't overpay, because generally you're not going to get the extra what you're paying for. You're just paying for paint or some company that says it's great, and then they go bankrupt and you're stuck with an expensive bicycle that doesn't work anymore. Well, the government's sure trying to screw everybody over. Realize that that new major wind project off of the Massachusetts coast was only done because the deal is, after they're done, they're supposed to put it back to the way it naturally was, because this is federal sea, right? This is federal land in the ocean. We own a certain amount miles out, right? Letting them use the federal land, but they got to put it back to the way it was. Well, they waived that they don't have to pay for that up front, that they can wait 15 years. 15 years from now, these people probably still won't even be in business. And then who's stuck with it? We, the taxpayers. As a group called Protect the Public's Trust says, and I quote, the more we dig into the details of the Vineyard Wind Project, the more concerning it becomes. The Biden administration brags that the first utility offshore scale project is here. But clearly, without them controlling the approval process and waiving requirements meant to protect taxpayers, Vineyard is unlikely to have ever gotten off the ground. So they got rules. Oh, we'll bypass the rules for you guys. We want that wind power out, right? They are just kissing the corporations' rear ends, giving them all this money, and then they don't even have to abide by the rules. Of course, if you ever followed any of this stuff up, almost all of them end up going bankrupt. I know one in Texas did, in the Obama administration. They were recycling stuff north of Conroe, Texas. They got all kinds of money from the government. And guess what? As soon as the government subsidy went down, the recycling plant that recycled tires and turned them into stuff, within a year it was bankrupt, and then it went out of business and didn't work anymore, right? They're getting this government money for nothing, and now they're don't even have to follow the rules, right? Just to push it through. These people, you know, they got their mind stuck on something, and they're going to ram it through, whether it's good for you or not. And then who pays for it? We, the taxpayers. And the stuff that was there to safeguard us, oh, well, they bypassed that. Who cares? Yeah, come on. Start building those things. We'll give you whatever you want, right? Kind of ridiculous when the person who's authorizing things isn't actually paying for it themselves. That's the problem with almost everything the government does. Just waste, graft, corruption. And in this case, having rules in place. Oh, we can bypass those. Don't worry about it. Start building those windmills. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.